What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into this edition of TSL Today. We record on Monday, April 17th, 2023 from the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. And man, do we have a fun one planned for you today. Chris Hirons joins us to talk Virginia Tech sweep over Georgia Tech on the baseball diamond. All that and much more coming up on this edition of TSL Today, and it starts right now. We welcome you back to this edition of TSL Today. TSL Today, like always, is sponsored by Triumph NIL. Triumph NIL, recruit, retain, reward. We appreciate Triumph NIL's partnership with both TSL and TSL Today. Well, guys, I think some introductions are in order. Across the way is our Virginia Tech baseball beat writer, Chris Hirons. Behind the scenes is today's best podcast producer in the land, Mr. Kyle Marshak, and I'm your host, Carter Hill. Well, Chris, as always, thanks for hopping on. Excited to talk some Hokie baseball.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I love being here.
Well, I want to start off with this. Virginia Tech, they sweep Georgia Tech at English Field this weekend. How massive is this for Tech baseball in 2023?
I mean, you look at kind of the way the year's gone. You know, they've put series together. You know, they had the UVA series where they won, and then they split the doubleheader with Duke last weekend. And then you go back even further to the first 3 or 4 where they just couldn't piece really anything together. And they didn't win either of those series. So I think this weekend was really kind of about putting, you know, it all together, all the pitching together, all the hitting together. I mean, we'll get into it later, but, you know, the bats were clicking. Georgia Tech obviously really wasn't this weekend, and then the pitching was probably the best it's been since the non-conference slate.
Friday winners 10-7 Virginia Tech. Saturday the Hokies win it 13-1, and Sunday Tech takes it 9-2. The Hokies pitching staff was really good again this weekend. What does it say about this group to be able to pretty much shut down what was the second best offense in the ACC?
I think it kind of shows, you know, this team is who we thought they were, who they kind of thought they were coming into the season, a very, very pitching-heavy team, and they got all of that. You know, Anthony Arguelles on Friday goes out and delivers, I think, 4 1/3. Griffin Green, before he gets hurt, you know, pitches, he's shoving in 5 1/3, and then Drew Hackenberg scatters 8 hits and 2 walks across, 6 innings. You know, I think, you know, they really ended up putting it all together this weekend, and the starting pitching was really good, and then the bullpen, you know, was stellar. Especially on Saturday and Sunday.
Well, I want to go game by game here. Again, we mentioned it, Virginia Tech, 10-7 winners over Georgia Tech on Friday. I want to look at that one. 2 long weather delays. It essentially was a 5.5-hour long contest. We all were there. Kyle Marshak, by the way, producing behind the scenes, was calling it on the ACC Network Extra. Obviously, you were there. Myself and Jack Brizendine, we stuck around the whole time. Thought it was really impressive for Virginia Tech to win that ball game. And I thought Anthony Arguelles, though just 4 1/3, was really good in the time that he had on the mound, and then Jack Hurley clicking offensively as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, I probably should have mentioned this in my story, but Anthony Arguelles, I mean, he pitches the first inning, tosses the second inning, and then a 45-minute weather delay, right? I mean, that's a long layoff. And then Tech also scored 4 runs in the bottom of the second inning after the weather delay. So, I mean, he probably went maybe 50 minutes to an hour in between throwing pitches. I thought that was kind of, you know, that should have been talked about more. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that up. But I thought that was really, really, really impressive that, you know, he went into this weather delay and, you know, had to watch his offense, watched his offense score 4 runs in the bottom of the second, and then, you know, comes out and throws, you know, two innings and gets another out in the 5th.
Were you surprised he came back out there after the first delay? And then the umpire delay too? So, like, essentially you had the weather delay, you had the umpire delay, and Georgia Tech, I guess Georgia Tech was in the field when they came back out there. So, like, that's a long time to sit down.
No, I actually wasn't surprised. You know, you go back to last year, the second NC State game at English Field, Drew Hackenberg had about a 45-minute delay in between pitches, or in between innings, when there was, I guess it was snow and a mixture of rain. But I wasn't surprised to see Arguelles go back out there. You know, they're only pitching once a week instead of, you know, twice a week like they are on minor league or Major League Baseball. And I think also Chef kind of just wanted to roll with the hot hand and, you know, not go into his bullpen in the 3rd inning. See what you could get out of Arguelles.
Tech had 13 hits offensively as a whole, and then Brady Curtner really good out of the bullpen as well. He struck out 5 in 2 innings pitched. He's been really, really good throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, it took him until the Pitt series saw a hit, and I think he had thrown like 8 or 9 innings. He was really good. Hadn't pitched a ton in between in a while. Like he's only like a 1-2 inning guy that you get, but his stuff is really, 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 really elite. His fastball, which is more of a cutter, sits around 93 or so, can run it up to 95, and his curveball has a ton of break on it. Some elite spin too, in the 3,200, 3,300 RPMs. I think Brady Curtner is kind of the guy this year that's made that jump up, just like Christian Worley did last year, where he threw like 13 1/3 shutout innings at the end of the season and into the postseason.
And then how about Saturday? It kind of felt like the Hokies were clicking on all cylinders. Now, I will say they only had 7 hits, but they put up 13 runs. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that had to do with Georgia Tech. They issued 18 walks, which is a school record. I feel like it's got to be a school record. If it's not, that's an issue. And then 21 free passes. So you're certainly not going to win a game if you're the Yellow Jackets, particularly on the road. But Tech got the hits when they needed to, and the pitching was really, really good too.
Yeah, another comment about the walk. The walks, I mean, that was a program record, 18 walks for Tech. Mm-hmm. That was set back in 76 and then tied again in 1990. Christian Martin walked 5 times in that game, had a chance for a 6th walk in the bottom of the 8th inning. That's been done 3 times before. Martin did it the other night. One happened in like 1980s, I think, like 86-ish maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
The next one was 2015 or 2016, I think. And then actually Carson DiMartini did it against Pitt 3 or 4 weeks ago, which
walked 5 times.
Yeah, walked 5 times, which I mean that's tied the school record twice in one season. But you give up 41 free bases that Pitt did. You're not going to win a lot of games.
No, absolutely not. Of course, the one dark cloud. We got to address it. The one dark cloud that kind of looms over the weekend, and what was an awesome weekend for Virginia Tech, is Griffin Green's status. And for those of you who missed it, he was, 5 1/3 into the ball game, was pitching probably the best he has all year long. And he just he threw a pitch. It was a ball. He immediately grabbed his right arm, in case you're listening, squatted down and called for the trainer, which of course, if you're a baseball person, is not good to see. We don't want to speculate or anything, but do you have any update on Griffin Green and what's maybe his status there?
So I asked Chef again the other day. I asked Chef after the Saturday game, and he said that he confirmed that it was an elbow injury. Mm-hmm. The way that that was pretty obvious. The way that Griffin grabbed his elbow with his glove as soon as he threw his 88th pitch to the 9th. I heard from a few fans in the crowd that he was kind of grimacing during his warm up pitches during that 6th inning. And then, obviously the 88th pitch to the 9th was, just one you didn't want to see, where he kind of just grabbed and then fell to his knees and just kind of screamed. I've seen it, I've seen a few times where some guys, they only really sprain their UCL, but they kind of have that reaction. Just
and hopefully it is just a sprain.
Yeah. And they have that reaction just because of fear and pain and whatnot. But I mean, Griffin's a tough dude.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet too. But no update given really on Saturday night, neither on Sunday. He's supposed to be checked out today. I would assume he's probably getting an MRI looked at, and I guess Tech will go from there.
Yeah, yesterday I did see him on the field yesterday during the handshake line, and his right arm was kind of just dangled over like a loose string. And I don't know. We hope the best for Griffin Green. Hopefully everything is okay, not just for his time at Virginia Tech, but his long-term future as well, because those are as scary of injuries as there possibly can be on the baseball field. So certainly hoping for the best there. If he is out, though, who does Tech turn to on the weekends? Do you go to Kieran Higgins? Do you go to Tyler Dean? Christian Worley's out for the year. So who do you potentially turn to in that Sunday spot?
So, I mean, obviously, I'm not the coach, but yeah. my gut feeling right now is probably Kieran Higgins, who, has started a few midweek games for Tech this year, has only got about 2 innings, and that's usually just for him to get some work in. But he has some starting history in the past. He started at Shippensburg, was brought in as a starter at Coastal Carolina before he went to Shippensburg, and then he started a little bit in the MLB Draft League in, what year is this? In the summer of 2021.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Well, the other thing too about that Saturday game, and this is very much a positive, it seemed like Tech definitely capitalized on the spring game crowd for the weekend. You know, there's a lot of alumni in Blacksburg hanging out. A lot took in the baseball game. Probably 3,500 people were there, packed to the brim, all the way down the left field line towards the Weaver Center, and then all the way down the right field line too, kind of in that patio area. That's exactly what you want to see in college baseball.
Yeah, no, I mean that is college baseball at its peak. I mean, I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was the season high in attendance. It brought out more than 3,000 people. I'm going back to the EVA series there, especially during that Saturday and Sunday game. Like the Saturday game, like that was a really, really good crowd. The one thing it didn't really have though was people lined up and sitting on the bleachers, kind of in the right field area. There was a good tailgate scene going on at the Hill, but I thought that like the crowd, especially for the Saturday game this weekend, that was probably the best I've seen it since probably the Super Regional. Yeah.
I wish I was here. I wish I was here for the Super Regional so I could compare it. But that was probably I was not here for the Regional or the Super, but that was probably as packed as I've seen English Field since the Friday Miami game last year on spring game weekend.
Yeah,
and I think that just shows you're capitalizing on success too. And it was cool to see that for sure. Mississippi State had like 17,000 people.
Yeah, they what was it? They had more than the A's and the Marlins
yes.
did the
Hear
night
that,
before.
Kyle? You're a huge baseball guy. Mississippi State, and not to go on a tangent, Mississippi State hosted Ole Miss in Starkville this weekend. They had 17,000 people at their game. That's more than the A's and the Marlins had for their home games that day.
Well, the A's doesn't shock me.
Yeah, the A's doesn't shock you. No, not at all. But it was really, really cool to see that crowd and that contingent show out for sure. And take advantage of, I think the athletic department did a really good job of the spring game at 3 o'clock, the baseball game at 7.
Yeah.
I think that just kind of lends itself perfectly, and people can grab a bite to eat or tailgate in between and then walk over to English for the day.
I thought the timing worked out really, really well. I was at the spring game, just kind of sitting in the stands, hanging out with some friends up until halfway through the third quarter or halfway through the fourth quarter. It worked out really, really well because I probably left around 4:45ish or so, and so the game ended around 5, and then everyone could go out to Mellow Mushroom or Sharky's or wherever you would go eat, and then they could just go back to the baseball game.
Jonah Hurney and Tyler Dean slammed the door on Saturday. Of course, Jack Hurling went yard again. He went yard all 3 games this weekend, has now homered in 11 of his last 13 games. Carson Jones went deep as well, and the place went nuts on that one. I will never forget that home run for sure. Finally, on Sunday, Virginia Tech dominant again, 9-2 winners over Georgia Tech. And honestly, Chris, I don't even know if it really felt that close. The Hokies pretty much dominated from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, David Bryant hit a 2-run homer in the second inning. I think Jack Hurley followed a few batters later with another solo home run. His 10th or 11th and 13th
11 out of 13,
games.
yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, he's now 1 away from tying the conference lead, and Jake Geloff and Brock Wilkin, who's hit, I guess they've hit 16 each. Hurley's up to 15. I mean, that game kind of felt over from start to finish. Drew Hackenberg obviously goes 6 innings. He's turned in some good stuff in his past 2 starts. I think he's allowed one earned run in his last 14 innings.
You mentioned David Bryant. That, in my opinion, though Drew Hackenberg was great, and it was great to see him be that dominant for the second consecutive week, kind of the Drew Hackenberg of old, I thought David Bryant was absolutely the story. 2 for 3, 2 home runs, really hasn't played a lot recently, transferred in from Radford, supposed to be the starting shortstop. He loses that spot to Clay Grady. He gets an opportunity with Carson DeMartini having to DH, and he certainly took advantage.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously he goes in the lineup for Carson, who Chef said on Friday didn't separate his shoulder, but popped it in and out of place is what Coach Chef thought. So, DeMartini, actually, that was his first game. He didn't start in the field since, he had gotten to Tech, which I thought that's a lot of durability right there. But, he DHs, and he actually had a pretty successful weekend at the DH spot too. I think he tripled on Saturday night, hit a double and a triple yesterday afternoon. But yeah, David Bryant really was a story, kind of a guy who you thought was going to be the everyday shortstop. Obviously, and not a knock on him, but Clay Grady's been really, really good.
Yeah.
Especially as a freshman. Clay Grady is a really, really high level kind of a guy who's like kind of well beyond his years. But David Bryant, and sometimes it does take a little bit to get used to ACC pitching. Used to kind of the step above of the Big South, which Radford was in, the pitching he saw for 4 years. But I thought he played a really, really good third base. Obviously not DeMartini level where the guy's elite, but I thought him at third, you really didn't lose a step with him over there defensively.
It's really nice depth to have, and actually it's just one game. The comparison I draw is almost to Carson Jones last year. Really didn't start all throughout the year. Gets an opportunity in that Kansas State game. He homered twice that day.
No, he homered once, and then
once, and then went on that absolute tear,
6 and 8 or something like that,
and has pretty much been an everyday starter since. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with David Bryant, but it does kind of register, kind of a comparison between the two there, and certainly taking advantage of your opportunity. And he'll probably now be in the lineup tomorrow night when he makes his return to Radford to face off against.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's baseball, man. You have a really good day, and that gives you the confidence to really go out there the next 6 games, have an absolute tear. That's just kind of the way the sport works. You kind of have a week stretch, to begin the season. You don't really hit well, and then it kind of lowers your confidence and can kind of send you for a spiral. But maybe that won't happen with Bryant. Maybe he uses this weekend, especially yesterday's 2-homer game, to really cement himself back in the lineup.
Last one game wise for you. How refreshing was it to see Drew Hackenberg for the second straight week? We mentioned it a little bit, but 6 innings, 1 earned run, 8 hits, but 100 pitches, and he was really, really effective. How refreshing was that to see?
Yeah, it was good. I think part of it, maybe a struggle has had to do with the fact that he's been kind of thrown everywhere on each day this year. Mm-hmm. He's pitched on. He was the Saturday guy coming into the year, then he moves to Friday for the Pitt series, and then now he pitches on 2 Sundays in a row. I think that kind of had a part to do with it. But he said yesterday after the game that it was really kind of getting back to his role as kind of a 2-seamer ground ball pitcher instead of someone that kind of relied on his strikeout stuff, because he's exactly kind of the ground ball type of guy you need.
So where does Virginia Tech now stand in the NCAA tournament picture? They were the last 2 seed in the LSU regional coming into this past weekend, correct?
Duke.
Okay, so they had dropped to the 3 line. But now I feel like after sweeping Georgia Tech, a proud program in the ACC, barring something catastrophic, I don't see the Hokies missing the NCAA tournament at this point. And I do want to bring up the hosting conversation in a minute, so say some stuff there. But I do want to hear your take on the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I don't think this team. I was never worried about Tech even missing the postseason. I thought that this team they would eventually figure things out, and they have. Obviously they have to win the next 4 weekends or not win every single series, but they have to keep playing winning baseball to really be like, okay, yeah, we'll be a 2 seed heading in instead of a 3 or a 4. I think going back those 3 or 4 series where they kind of struggled, Boston College, they haven't played the best baseball, but they've had a good season. Mm-hmm. They knocked off Tennessee in a midweek too. Miami's probably one of the top 3-4 teams in the ACC this year. Pitt struggling, but they took at least
2 or 3 in Charlottesville.
2 or 3 in Charlottesville, and then who was the other series they lost? It was BC.
They
Miami.
lost to BC, swept by Miami, lost at Pitt, and then lost. They split with Duke.
Yeah, UVA.
2 or 3 with UVA. God, so, what are we forgetting?
I don't know if we're forgetting one.
What are we forgetting? I'll pull it up real fast.
Okay, but anyway, they obviously showed that they could play winning baseball, especially those last 24 or so innings of the UVA series. Then obviously they go into Duke. They have a really good start from Griffin Green in game 1. And then Drew Hackenberg obviously shuts them down. They win game 2, and then this weekend, they kind of go in and sweep Georgia Tech. I thought that, they kind of really established themselves back in college baseball to where, confidently they'll probably be a 2 seed come tournament time.
Yeah, we're actually not forgetting a series.
Yeah,
so So those are their series losses. So they have not lost an ACC series since the Pitt series, and probably actually in my opinion, they probably would have won that Duke series. I think their pitching was set up to win that game 3. So kind of a tough break there. I do want to bring up, we were talking about this off air. So, coming into the past 2 weekends, there have been some outsiders that have said there's a chance Virginia Tech doesn't make the NCAA tournament. And while we just talked about that's probably not going to happen at this point, I actually think sneakily and kind of under the radar, they're 21-12 right now, 8-9 in ACC play. I think if they finish the right way, they finish up ACC-wise at Florida State, who is having a terrible year. I mean, they're going to miss their first NCAA tournament since like 1982 or something like that. And it's still Florida State. You still got to go to Tallahassee. You finish up with an even North Carolina team essentially at home. Then you host Clemson at home, probably a step below you, though they're pretty decent. Then, of course, you got to go to Wake Forest, and they're arguably the best team in the country, so that's going to be tough. But if the Hokies finish the right way in ACC play, and assuming they don't drop one to Radford or JMU or Marshall or Bowling Green, I think there's actually an opportunity for Virginia Tech to host a regional. For sure, if they win the Final Four ACC series, I think they're hosting. If they win 3 of 4, that's a long time away, but if they win 3 of 4 and the series they lose is to Wake and they don't get swept, I think there's a chance the Hokies host another regional in Blacksburg.
Absolutely. I mean, coming into the season, I was kind of expecting them to, host, that would kind of be best case scenario, host as, a 12 to 16 seed. Obviously, it kind of didn't happen the way, maybe it was supposed to with them, starting with the slow start in ACC play. But, the past 2-3 weekends they played really, really well. You go down and they got bit by the schedule bug. They play some really, really good teams early in the year, but FSU, long flight, long travel day that's going to be, which might hurt you during the weekend, but they should take 2 or 3 from FSU. Clemson, you'll have UNC, you'll have UNC at home. And UNC always brings a good crowd out in Blacksburg, so that'll be on Tech's side. And they've taken the last 2 series with UNC, I believe. Yeah, because they won in 21 and then last year. And then, Clemson's just not who they were 5, 6, 7 years ago, not who they used to be. But they're getting back there to that point. And I think those are all 3 winnable ACC series. And then you go, obviously down to Wake Forest, that's going to be a tough place to win. But, Tech only has 9 ACC losses this year. Like, if you kind of read the message boards and, looked at, Tech's baseball replies on Twitter and Instagram, you would think, this team has 15 ACC losses. But they have 9 ACC losses. They lost 9 ACC games last year. I think... and they were a 4 seed last year after losing 9 ACC games. I'm not going to say, they're going to go out and sweep every single series from now on, but, you only lose 12, 13 ACC games. You're still on the hunt for to host a regional, especially since the ACC is probably, college baseball, the conference is 1A, 1B, ACC, SEC, however you want to stack that up.
And who knows, if you go on a run in Durham, you have that to your advantage too. You probably are going to have to win it to really enhance, because like the tournament, same thing with basketball. We saw it last year with Virginia Tech. Like, tournaments don't enhance your resume all that much because it's one game. But if you somehow go on a run and win the ACC, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. And the committee, the college baseball committee doesn't, view the tournament as something that can really hurt you. It's really only viewed as something that can help you if you have a good weekend.
So you do have that luxury if you need it. So I think Tech right now will be the 9 seed in Durham, but we got a long way until we reach that point coming up.
They're 7-9 and they're still, only the 9 seed, which is, just shows you kind of how stacked and how close this ACC race will be for the rest of the year.
No doubt. Well, Chris, what's coming up on TSL this week from a baseball standpoint? At Radford tomorrow, and then a 3-game series at Florida State this weekend.
Yep. So I'll be at Radford tomorrow. I'll talk to Coach Sheff, see if I can get an update on Griffin Green, see how that's going. But yeah, and FSU, I'll cover that from my couch. So have a recap over this weekend. And that'll be it. And then obviously on to JMU and UNC.
No trip to Tallahassee for Mr. Hirons.
No. I mean, it is my last semester of college. I'd rather, kind of spend it here with my friends. You know what I
mean? Oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. I enjoyed hanging out at your place the other day. So you gotta say bye to Nick and Jack the next few weeks too, who of course are involved at TSL. Well, Chris Hirons, thanks so much for hopping on. Kyle Marshak behind the scenes, today's best podcast producer in the land. Thanks. Thank you so much. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. The Hokies sweep Georgia Tech on the baseball diamond. They're back in action tomorrow at Radford. Quick note too, Tech softball, they lose 2-3 at Notre Dame. this past weekend, and then they will host Radford tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Tech Softball Park. It's also being streamed on the ACC Network Extra. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of TSL Today. We'll talk to you Wednesday, and until then, take care, Tech fans. Thanks for tuning in.